Right. Okay, welcome to Listen In. This is a podcast about podcasts hosted by me. My name is Kelsey and my coworker Andrea.
Hi, everyone.
All right. So first, we're going to talk about why podcasts. What is a podcast? Where can I listen? How can I listen? What should I listen to? And why do we like podcasts?
I think it's been kind of a running joke between the both of us that this technically actually isn't a podcast.
It's not
So I've made that joke at least like 6 times while we've been doing this
prepare.
little slideshow for you. So it's more like a slidecast, halfway between like a webinar and a podcast, since you can't see us, but you also are seeing some video. You're seeing the slides that we're showing you. So
Right. And it's almost like a podcast is kind of like multiple people having a conversation. And it's kind of what we're doing in a way, I guess.
yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about like all the statistical things about why podcast and how you can listen to podcasts, but also a little some personal stories about our podcast likes and dislikes, and you know, just have fun.
All that jazz. Okay. So, what is a podcast? Yeah, my notes are in front of my screen. Okay. Um, did you want to take this one or you want me to take it?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, a
Okay.
podcast is an episodic series of spoken word digital audio files. So, like I said, you're hearing us, and technically, we're not like video chatting with you. But you can also see something on the screen. So, it's technically, this is not a podcast, like I said. But podcasts have been becoming more and more popular over the last few years, and this is like a how to get into podcast kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Newsflash.
Newsflash.
Okay. I went too fast. Okay. So, where do I go? So, there's quite a few different ways that you can listen to a podcast. As long as you have, a phone, computer, tablet, you name it, then you have access to podcasts. Personally, I use my phone, so I use Apple Podcasts. But for Androids, there are Google Podcasts, and there are other apps such as Podbean, Castbox, Overcast, Spotify, and iHeart. And some of those
So,
over. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say some of those also overlap. So you can go onto a computer and go on to their websites and listen to the podcast there.
And I actually listen to podcasts on my phone, but I also listen on my computer, and I also sometimes use my TV to listen to them. I have a Fire Stick on my TV, so I can listen to Spotify using my using my TV speakers, which is like kind of a roundabout way of doing it, I guess.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know
But
you did that.
yeah, so if you have a smart TV or a Fire Stick, Spotify is an app that you can have on pretty much any kind of smart device. So I use Spotify specifically, and I use a whole bunch of different devices to listen to Spotify, which is really good because you can, listen to it on your phone. If you're like walking, just have your phone. You can listen to it on your computer. If you're doing work, you can listen to it on your TV if you're cleaning around the house, which I know is kind of weird, but that's what I usually use my TV for when I'm cleaning my room
It
or the
works.
living room. I just put it on the TV. That way, you're not wasting your phone battery and you don't have to carry around your laptop with you either. So
Fair point.
I'm sure there are easier ways to do that too if you have like a home sound system or something like that, if you're a little bit more technologically advanced than I am, but the TV speakers work fine. So that's what I tend to use.
That works. I didn't know about that. Okay. Fun fact. Okay. So where do I go? Apple Podcasts. So I choose to use Apple Podcasts. It's right on my phone, and it has, I think, pretty much the same podcast that any other, website or app would have. And you can just easily download it and listen to it and get updates. And I really like it. It's free, so it's there. You don't need to make an account or anything. You could just find something you like and listen to it.
Like I said, I use Spotify, and I do have a premium account, which, I'm still getting my master's degree, by the way, so I'm technically a student, and the student rate right now is $4.99, and it gets you access to Hulu too. So you get a video streaming service and a music podcast streaming service all rolled into one $5 package, which I really like.
Wow.
Spotify, though, yeah, I know it's good.
That's really good. Can we all be
This is
students?
not this is not sponsored, by the way. I think if you're not a student, it's like $7.99, so $8, and I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure you get Hulu. I'm not 100%. You would have to double check that. For $8, so still not a bad price if you are looking to purchase streaming services. Spotify, though, you do not have to purchase it. You can get it for free, but you have to listen to commercials. And
Yeah.
when I first thought I wasn't going to pay for Spotify, I was just going to, listen to the commercials, and take my lumps. But it turned out that I can't stand the commercials. It really ruins the flow of what you're listening to, especially if you're like listening to a great playlist, or if you're listening to a podcast. You kind of have to, it gives you regular intervals to stop in to listen to these commercials, but I just could not stand it. I hated it. So I pointed up the $5, and it is well worth it, in my opinion. Podcasts on Spotify are really great. They do top podcasts, so the most listened to ones, and then they also recommend based on what you listen to. And we'll get into like what I personally listen to, what Kelsey listens to later on. I think next episode maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but it's really nice because you're able to see, they also have different categories. It's really nice because you're able to see the most listened to playlist, what everyone else is listening to, where people are getting their news kind of thing, and also where people are getting their entertainment. That's one of the big draws, I think, to podcasts, which again we'll get into later. It's kind of a diverse means of entertainment. So I
Yeah.
really enjoy using Spotify. My library is chock full of podcasts that I've listened to. I can listen to one episode. I've listened to entire series. It really depends on what you're in the mood for. So
Yeah, like I know that Apple Podcasts also has that where they have what's popular and what you might like and stuff like that. Um,
mhm.
which I think is cool because some people never really know like, oh, like that
Yeah,
maybe they like something else, but they
I
wouldn't
think
just venture off to it.
yeah, it's a very good starting point to have recommendations, which I think is pretty standard for most of the streaming services that you're going to use. They're going to say, like, you should check this out
Yeah.
because it's a good way of promoting, their most listened to podcast. Things that people are looking for are going to be right there on the top page. I mean, if you hear about it everywhere, if everyone's listening to it, obviously, that's something that you might want to check out. But I think it's pretty standard for all the streaming services that we mentioned in the previous 2 slides ago, that they're going to have that kind of recommended section, which is great. You
Yeah.
don't have to take our word for it on any of these. You can see what everyone else is listening to. Of course, like I said, we're probably going to make some recommendations of our own based on what we like, but
There's
you
a
know,
ton out there.
yeah, there's a ton out there, and like I said, you don't have to take our word for what's good.
Yeah. All right. So this is a little chart, I guess you want to call. Yeah, it says chart.
Infograph. Yeah.
It's fine. Pictograph.
Yeah.
About podcasts. So podcasts are trending. They're really popular. Different celebrities or authors have created their own podcasts. So if you like different celebrities or you keep up with, pop culture, that's a good way to continue with podcasts. The most popular genre is comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Next is education and news. So, like for example, if you like TED Talks or The Daily Show, um, things like that, you'll be able to find that on podcasts as well. And then also, fun fact is that libraries are also creating their own podcasts, and This isn't a podcast, but this is our attempt at something like a podcast.
Maybe one day we'll have our own podcast about podcasts for real.
Right,
And
yeah.
I don't know what that would look like, but maybe we'll try it. Or just a
Figure it.
library podcast where we talk about our library news.
Yeah.
I think my favorite genre is definitely comedy. I love to laugh. I really do. And when you get a really good comedy podcast, like it's like transportative. It's really good. It's a great way to pass time. And well, I mean, we'll get into that in a few slides, I think, but I
Yeah.
think definitely I'm on the comedy bandwagon.
I like
Bandwagon.
Yeah, I like the comedy, and I also like the self-help, like the author and motivational speaker Jay Shetty. He's pretty
Mhm.
awesome, and he has a whole bunch of different guests that come on, and I don't
Mm.
know, it's kind of like, oh, like aha moments, and I don't know, it's cool to listen to. So
Yeah, a little bit of educational with motivational.
yes, exactly. Okay. Oh, this is a lot. Okay.
We're showing you a lot of things right
Yeah,
now.
you know. So this is some podcasting statistics. Not like I passed statistics, but it's okay. So
I don't know what it is, but statistics is like consistently the worst math class that you can ever
it
take. I
is.
don't know. It's just so uh, I can do statistics when they are for real things that are like right in front of me. Like we did library statistics for say, usage of books or some of the services, and I can understand that perfectly. I understand it. But when you do it on something that's like it's not meaningful to the
Yeah.
person, like it makes no sense for some reason. It goes from making absolute concrete sense, like physical evidence, to being like something fake numbers. You don't know
Yeah,
what it means. I don't know what
exactly.
that is, but that's how I literally everyone that I've talked to about statistics, well, the limited range of people that I know, though feel the same. Like statistics is fake until it actually applies to something that you care about.
Yeah.
Which okay, that was the total tangent. Anyways,
Yeah, but
how about
it's
this?
fine. It's like a podcast. We're like on a podcast right now.
Yeah, this
Okay.
this is what you're getting, a real look into podcasting.
Yeah, us talking. All right. So there are, fun fact, over 1 million podcasts out there. So if you thought that you couldn't find one that might interest you, you definitely will. And there
There's so many.
yeah, there's over 30 million episodes. So
Mhm.
the ratio is pretty high. There are about 51% of US Americans that listen to podcasts, and 49% of those are listened at home, while 22% are while driving. And I'm one of that 22%. I really love listening to it
Yeah, me
while
too.
I'm driving.
I mean, like I said, I definitely do listen to them at home as well, but
Yeah.
the reason that I got into them was driving. But we'll get to that. That's a long story. I also found it really interesting in the fun fact section that we have right next to that the orange statistics infograph. The fact that people that listen to podcast listeners are more likely to subscribe to streaming services, which as soon as I read that, I was like, oh, that's me.
Oh.
I was like, I'm a video streamer all the way. I do streaming services, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, which I don't know if that's necessarily better, but we do have a little series called, what is that? Cut the Cord?
Yeah, cut the cord.
Hosted by Kelsey, where she discusses some of those streaming services and how you can transfer from cable to the services instead. And I prefer them to cable for the most part. I mean, there are obviously some things that you're going to miss, like News 12 is not available on any streaming service, I don't think.
Yeah, I
But
don't think so.
yeah, but for the most part, you can get almost anything on Amazon, which I know this is not a plug for Amazon, but
It's not sponsored.
this is again not sponsored, but I really enjoy being able to just be like, oh, I'm gonna watch this show, and it's usually on Amazon or on a streaming app that Amazon gives you. Again, prices may vary, but it has a great selection. And like I said, I get Hulu for $5 rolled into my Spotify. So they also have a lot of networks on there that do next day streaming. So say like your show comes on a Monday, by Tuesday it will be on Hulu. So I once again, we're so off topic here, but
It happens.
but yeah, I've definitely streaming services, that's me.
Yeah, you could definitely also check out Cut the Cord program on YouTube. You'll probably already be on the channel because you'll be watching this. So fun fact there. But back to our fun facts here. Um, so it looks like podcast listeners are much more active on every social media channel. And then you talked about the subscriptions. And they're
Uh,
also more likely to own a smart speaker. Ooh, fun fact.
oh, smart speaker. No, I don't own one of those, but
No? Oh,
um,
get on
social
that.
and also the streamer thing was like 100% true. The social media thing, not really. I'm not a social media person. Like
Right?
I take it or leave it. Like, I mean, it's nice, in some aspects, to be able to, like see what everyone's doing. And I do have some social media accounts, but I'm not like I don't tweet, I don't post to Facebook. I just,
Yeah.
I
You're just
just,
there.
yeah. I mean, you really have to, in order to use Twitter effectively, I mean, you have to be on it. You can't just use someone else's tweets. I mean, you can, but it's not as like engaging, I guess.
Right.
And I definitely do look at Facebook posts. So that's another thing, but like I'm not active on either one of those. I don't have a Twitter account and I'm not active on Facebook. And then Instagram, I don't it's all about the picture, right? And I don't do that. I'm not a picture
I
person.
know.
And then what else? What else is there? I think that's pretty much those are the three big ones: Facebook, Instagram, and
Yeah.
Twitter.
I feel like I don't really know any others.
I don't do LinkedIn either. Everyone says that you should. It's very
I do,
important.
but I don't see the purpose of it.
LinkedIn is for those who don't know, is a like kind of a business side social media. It's like Facebook, but it's all about your business accomplishments, and like your career trajectory. Oh, sorry, that was a
Ooh.
hard word. Trajectory. It's so people can find you based on you know aspects of your career, like what you've been doing career wise. I said career so many
Yeah.
times.
Well, yeah, it's like I guess potential employers can like look at it and see if
And
they'd
you
like
can
you. Some reach out. Yeah.
find people based on what they've done, you know, in their career for the 80th time. career. How many times can I say that? Yeah.
Right.
But no, I mean, I don't really do any social media. Unfortunately, it's just not my bag. So
That's
I stay away from this. The streaming thing, very true.
not the smart speaker though.
Not the smart speaker. I I don't want to get into fringe theories of conspiracy theories, but they do collect a lot of your data, and it's
You
not
do.
like I'm against that. Obviously, I have a cell phone. Cell phones do the same exact thing, and I know having an extra speaker isn't going to change the data that is collected by these companies. So, it's not really a hill to die on for me. Maybe one day, but you know, while I can, I'd rather not have the. And also, I hear that they turn on at weird times. Like even if you're not talking to them, if they hear something or if they hear the television, they'll turn on.
Oh, that's
So,
weird.
and I don't like that kind of ghost in the machine thing where all of a sudden it's sentient and walking around and ordering groceries for you. So
Oh, I don't want that.
so I'm staying away from that right now, which is not to say that they're not useful. Obviously they are, um especially for people that aren't maybe super technologically savvy. They're easy. Well, I mean, you might need help setting them up. But once they're set up, they are easy to use, and you can use them for a whole different like host of things. They could be used for turning your lights on and off. You can set timers for your lights on them, security alarms, being able to ask your appliances to do things, which again is weird. You don't want your stove turning on. But it could be helpful if you're not as dexterous, or if you have trouble with arthritis or Parkinson's disease. Turning on and off the stove through means of voice is something that's, an incredible technological advance, and something
Yeah.
that you can do with these smart speakers. Also, like I said, ordering groceries, not having to go online and physically put things into a cart, but saying, Alexa, please send me this once my cart is full, and being able to just kind of say it and forget it is, again, a great thing for people who maybe don't have time or aren't able to, access a physical computer regularly.
Right.
Yeah. All these little things.
All the little
Al-
things.
Although I do think they might be harder to use if you don't have a physical computer to access regularly. But again, that is not neither here nor there. This is a podcast about podcasts.
We're so off topic, but it's fine. This
I
is
mean,
what podcasts are about.
you're getting a ton of information from us here, just things that you never thought you would
Yeah, exactly.
never thought you would learn. So, all right.
All right. Next. All right. So why we podcast versus why we listen to podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So why we listen to podcasts. So it's kind of like how you listen to the radio or a CD in the car. This is another alternative. Again, you can be up to date with the pop culture if you like that. You could also listen to different stories and books on this type of platform. It can inspire you, keep you educated, help you with personal growth or for entertainment. And then why we podcast. So this is a different type of advancement in media technology. The host can connect with their audience in different ways, and have different types of guests as well. It's fun to create a podcast. If you can't tell, we're having fun. And
We are having fun.
and podcasts are pretty easy to create.
I know personally why I listen to podcasts is actually, like I said, kind of a long story, but I'll give you the hopefully short-ish version of it. Is that I got my license pretty late in life, and I'm a very nervous driver. So I don't like driving when someone else isn't in the car with me, especially at night or early in the morning or really anytime. It's I shouldn't say it's a specific time. It's always. And I've gotten better at it, but before I was like super confident in driving, it felt good to have other voices in the car with me, which I know sounds kind of weird. But the whole reason that I got into listening to the first podcast that I listened to was to have like kind of that, not distraction from driving, but it made me feel less alone in my car. And I was driving very long distances, at least an hour to 2 hours in the car by myself. So it would, and especially in rush hour traffic, you're leaving at like 6-7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
It's anxiety inducing. People drive crazy.
they
People
do.
drive fast. It's go go go, and then all of a sudden you're slamming on your brakes. Hopefully you're not slamming on your brakes, but people slam on their brakes. And if you know anything about the Long Island Expressway, it's a pretty treacherous place. Also, I've not recently, but earlier this year, driving on Sunrise Highway.
Oh, that's brutal.
The road conditions for one are terrible.
Yeah.
We won't even get into that. It's a terrible road to drive on. Not that the LAU is super better with all the potholes, but at least it's more familiar to me. Anyway, so I started out by listening to podcasts for that reason, and I listened to a podcast that was recommended to me by I think by one of my college friends. I'm not sure if I'm remembering this correctly, but one of my undergraduate college friends, she recommended it, and when I first started listening to it, I was like, I don't know if I like this. These guys are weird. They're doing weird things. I don't know if I get it. And then it evolved into, and we'll talk about the podcast that I'm talking about later on. I think episode 2 we'll talk about it, or maybe 4, I'm not sure. But it evolved into this beautiful, intricate story that was so fun to listen to. I've pretty much listened to everything else that they've recorded up until this point. So that was like the best possible introductory podcast for me, because it took this kind of ambiguous general concept of a podcast and turned it into like an experience. Like it was I have to tell you, and I know this is going to sound, so again, not sponsored. So this is going to sound like so gushy about saying this, but I really do feel like some of the podcasts out there, they like transcend normal storytelling means. Like even if you were watching this on TV, it would still be great. It would still be a great story. And I think actually they're making a TV show out of this podcast. It's going to be an animated series. It's already a graphic novel. It's the best. It's one I mean, I cried at the finale. I don't need to tell you how rare, maybe not for me, how rare it is. I cry pretty easily, especially at good, storytelling is one of the things that really gets me. But being able to listen to it and these different characters and these different voices, I don't know. I know you get that from television too, but there was something about listening to it and not seeing it and being able to create like this kind of rich landscape in your head. It was just fantastic. And that's personally why I listen to podcasts. It combines for me the best parts of television and reading in the same thing. So you have like the storyscape that television provides, like that kind of sensory experience, combined with the need to use your own imagination to create the world and like the context, the way the characters look, how they move, the entire world is being like, you're kind of populating it with your own imagination, if that makes sense. So that's why I listen. It's the best of both worlds for me, and it's like a complete kind of, it's engaging, but also informative in a way. I don't know. Does that make sense? I think it makes sense.
I mean,
we'll go with that.
That's a much better and much more exciting reason than my story. My story is, I recently started this job in this year, and I am not used to a long commute, and you can only listen to the same CD over and over and over again so many times.
Very true.
So then one of my friends suggested listen to a podcast, and that's what I've been doing ever since, and I love it. And yeah, that's my story, which is not as elaborate and awesome as Andrea's, of course.
I am prone to flights of fancy. I don't talk a lot, but once I get talking, I mean, the whole point of this is to listen to me talk, right?
Oh yeah.
Right. Once I get talking, especially about something that I really love, and I have to tell you, I love that podcast. I love everything that those creators do. So I will be talking about them more. And I don't know if it's cliche. They're pretty well known if you listen to podcasts, but I'm guessing if you're watching / listening to this, you don't listen to podcasts, or else you could skip episode 1 and go straight on to episode 2.
But I bet now you're gonna
have
people listen to them.
Yeah, now you're intrigued. I've whet your appetite for some explanation of who these creators are. And again, not every things that I like obviously aren't going to be for everyone. Just because I laugh doesn't mean everyone's gonna laugh. Although I would say that some things are just subjectively funny also. And it also depends. I feel like I don't want to get too far into this because we're going to go off on another tangent. But I feel like humor is also a little bit generational. Things that, maybe millennials or Gen Z find funny, we lean more towards the absurd than the sarcastic. Well, I mean, not that we don't use sarcasm, obviously. But I think a lot of earlier generations relied more on sarcasm and slapstick and kind of like general observational comedy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Whereas millennials and Gen Z generations kind of lean more towards the absurd, like things that uh things that really don't make sense and that's why they're funny, or they make perfect sense and that's why they're funny, but it's like, it's not a straightforward like linear progression of humor. Is that
Right.
yeah.
No.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So the objective humor of some things may be generational, but that's not to say that you're not going to find a comedy podcast. You'll find something
Oh
if
yeah,
you're interested in a comedy podcast.
with over 1 million podcasts, you'll find
Hmm.
one.
You'll find something. Trust me, there's
Yeah,
something for everyone.
nothing to worry about. Okay. Oh, this
Oh,
is
so we
one.
have
What?
another little infograph for you guys. A continuation of why we listen.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know
Yeah.
what.
Oh,
Where are
okay.
my
I
notes?
was
Oh no.
I
Yeah.
was worried. Yeah, I thought that you were talking and that
Oh no.
cut
You're
out.
good.
So I was like, whoop. Uh,
No, I just didn't have
this
notes
kind of
for it.
yeah, no, it's okay. I was gonna say this is the first time that we've actually gotten through this entire presentation slash podcast without being interrupted and
Knock on wood.
yeah, by technical difficulty. So I just assume every time that I can't hear Kelsey that it's a technical difficulty.
Yeah.
uh, but this is again just a little bit more information about why we listen, the intersection of education and entertainment, which kind of goes back to what I was talking about of why I listen. I think it might be, I mean, I definitely listen for entertainment more than education. The things that I listen to are funny or a storytelling kind of podcast. Not to say that I don't listen to educational things, but less definitely. Um, but that's not to say that you're not getting some kind of, brain exercise, as it were, out of listening to things that are entertainment based. Like I
Right.
said, with like you have to flex your imagination muscles on a lot of this because you're using your imagination to like see these characters. They're not like something that's put before you completely conceptualized. It's almost like in a lot of the storytelling podcasts, they give you an idea and they narrate it for you, but you have to, it's like, reading a book or having a book read to you.
Right.
So, and I think that is definitely like a huge part of brain development and maintenance is using your imagination, having to turn on the creativity. So
Yeah.
that would be my take from it. I mean, I guess there are a few podcasts that are more educational, but mostly I listen to them for the stories, which I know is not always it's not maybe what you want to hear because we should be promoting education, but I think it's a different kind of education.
It is.
People you read books and you learn from them without even really realizing you're learning a lot of the time just by seeing different perspectives from authors and putting yourself in different worlds. You're learning even though you're not actively doing a math problem or something like that.
Yeah, well, there's also like you can go through different phases. Like like maybe 1 month like you really want to listen to like a story on a podcast, and then next month maybe you're planning a trip to go to another country and you want to brush up on some language,
Oh,
and
that's true.
so I think depending on the phase that you're in or whatever you're craving to listen to, I think there's everything. Um, but yeah, there's a whole bunch of different stuff on there. You can
That's
learn
definitely true.
Japanese and um,
Definitely.
yeah,
I wonder if Tyler used a podcast to listen.
maybe, right?
Probably, probably not. Sorry, Tyler is a colleague of ours that recently went to Japan, and
Right.
he was practicing his Japanese using it was actually a pretty cool website that he was using, but I'm pretty sure he didn't ever use a podcast, but who knows?
Yeah, who knows, right? I
You
don't know.
could.
He could
It's
have.
I have in my queue, which is like a little list of podcast things that I should listen to. I have French for beginners because I've always wanted to learn French,
Oh, cool.
and I have like a one of those. I did Latin when I was in high school and college because it is good for, I don't know. It's a good base for all languages,
Yeah,
or
it is.
so I'm told. And it does make it easy to understand a lot of what people are saying and to read other languages, but I can't speak fluently in any foreign language. So
I
that
can't
is
either.
that's the downside to picking Latin. Um, over say like Spanish or French in high school. At least you get a good basis for vocabulary words in those languages, which I do not have, I guess. I have a good, well, it's hard to say. It's easy. It's easy for me to read foreign languages to try to figure it out or to at least get an idea of what someone is saying. But fluency is far beyond my grasp, I would say. Is that everything?
That's everything.
That's everything.
Okay. So if you guys liked this, we are having another episode next Tuesday. They should be every Tuesday at 6 o'clock. But yeah, we hope you enjoyed it.
And we hope that you'll come back.
Yeah, right? Please come
even if
back.
you even if you just skip around to look at the slides and completely ignore us in the background, we won't tell. So
Yeah, it'll be fun.
so see you next week.
See you next time.